One of the biggest challenges about maintaining a good state of mind is the confusion surrounding positivity and balancing that with being realistic. Far too often, the word realistic is used as a synonym for negativity. And far too many people think that you can be either positive or negative and there is no middle ground. But that's actually not the case. There is actually a middle ground, one that empowers you to be both positive and realistic. And that's what we'll explore in today's talk. Keep listening to learn more. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Growth Philosophy Podcast, a bite-sized weekly podcast focused on empowering you to think better and upgrade your life. So let's talk about positivity. At some point or other, you might have come across people who go on and on about being positive. And the truth is, that can be a bit annoying. As useful and good as it is to be positive, that sort of obsessiveness with positivity misses the point. The point isn't to be a zealot about being an optimist, because that's just not how life works. Life has struggles, confusions, and nuances. Downs are just as much a part of life as the ups, just like how days and nights are a constant part of any given day. Believing that the sun doesn't set doesn't make it so, and believing that only good things happen in life isn't realistic. Positivity is great, but being blinded by the idea of optimism is like going through life with blinkers on. I talked about black and white thinking not long ago, and that sort of blind optimism is just an example of how black and white thinking works. For blind optimists, only optimism exists and nothing else. And unfortunately, that's just living in denial, because the world isn't a bed of roses. We'd like it to be so, but it isn't. That said, I'm not a fan of the alternative, negative either. In fact, optimism is much, much better than pessimism. Negativity and pessimism are bad for us for a whole host of reasons, including the increased amount of stress and fear and unhappiness they create. So neither blind optimism and nor pessimism is good. So what I prefer and practice and recommend is the middle ground, which is pragmatism. Pragmatism. It's where you are positive, but also at the same time, you're realistic. Before we explore pragmatism further though, there's something that needs to be cleared up about being realistic first. Far too many people believe that being realistic is the same thing as being pessimistic, and that's an incorrect assumption. Because being realistic does not involve being negative. This is often why the word realistic comes attached with negative connotations, especially in the personal development industry. And that is a grossly misrepresented idea, because being realistic has nothing to do with being pessimistic. Realistic is about being objective and objectively assessing situations. Objectivity is neither positive nor negative. It's like how when it is 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Nothing more, nothing less. That's what objectivity is. You can attach a negative meaning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but that's a subjective interpretation. So being realistic is like that. It's all about looking at things as they are, and has nothing to do with being negative or pessimistic. So now that we have cleared that up, let's talk about positivity. And that brings me to yet another misconception, which is that you are either positive or you're not. That you're either an optimist or you're a pessimist. That, yet again, is a major misunderstanding, because you absolutely can fall between the two. It's not an either-or choice. As for optimism and being positive, I'm all for positive thinking. positive thinking is great and has a whole host of benefits. Positive thinking helps you create a good state of mind. It helps you reduce stress and anxiety. It promotes happiness, and on the list goes. So positive thinking is great, and I'm all for positivity and positive thinking. But what I'm not a fan of is blind optimism. That is unrealistic, irrational, impractical, and naive. Also, that approach to life makes you vulnerable, since the challenges of life can easily blindside you. This is yet again why pragmatism is the better option. Because when you're pragmatic, you will not be blind to any challenges that life might throw your way, as it often does. Being pragmatic helps you to be more prepared, and it can also help you to be more resilient and even prepare you better for life's challenges and setbacks. But what pragmatism is not about is about being negative or pessimistic. They are not synonyms. In fact, pragmatism is all about being positive. Pragmatism is, in that sense, just a more practical version of optimism. Pragmatism, think about it like a middle ground. If you think of optimism on one end of a scale and pessimism on the opposite end, pragmatism will fall not quite in the center but rather closer to optimism than to pessimism. Being a pragmatist is about hoping for the best but being prepared for the worst, just in case. Life is unpredictable after all, and it is better to be prepared. Like the saying goes, it is better to be safe than sorry. Being a blind optimist would mean getting no insurance whatsoever for your house, since you will believe that nothing will ever go wrong with your house. Being a pessimist, on the other hand, might end you costing a ton of fees, since you might get every type of insurance available and more. Neither is great, as you can see. So in that scenario, a pragmatist will get the insurance that really is important but nothing more. It's about doing what's necessary, rather than making decisions based on either having too much or too little hope. Be positive by all means, but also be practical. And that's why I suggest being pragmatic, since it is a great blend of being both practical and optimistic. There's no reason why you can't be practical and positive at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive. If anything, they actually complement each other well, and balancing those two comes with many benefits. Balance here is the key word. Unchained, unbounded optimism isn't good, and neither is being too practical and discounting optimism. Like pretty much everything in life, too much of neither is good. A far better option is the middle ground, which is where pragmatism comes in. Most people think that you are either positive or negative, and that those are the only two options available to you. But that could not be further from the truth. Positivity and negativity are parts of a scale, and people are usually on different levels of positive and negative. No matter how much you want or wish, reality isn't a black and white construct, and you aren't either positive or negative. No one is. Also realize that being positive isn't about being blindly optimistic, and being realistic isn't about being negative or pessimism. It's all about balance. Hope for the best and also prepare for the worst. That's been one of my mottos in life, and you can adapt to that too. Adopt that motto yourself. That way you'll win when things work out, but in the unlikely scenario when they don't, you'll also be prepared to deal with the setbacks and eventually come out on top. Practice pragmatism.